I just went on a walk. And after 14 months of quarantine, that's hard. Hello, my dears. My name is Mariana, and welcome to my channel. So about 7 months ago, I posted a video on how to create a more mystical life. And not like a cutesy mystical life, but like a real one. And I asked you if you wanted some books on how to make your life more mystical, and you said yes, and I didn't do it. But here we are now. So today I'm gonna go through my mystical picks, the things that have been inspirational to me as I delve into mysticism, and I hope bring something beautiful into your life too. Now, I think it's really important to remember that mysticism is just as much experiential as it is intellectual. And that's a lot of what I was talking about in this video. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. So there's a mix of things that'll really engage you through the brain and things that'll touch the heart. And that's really where the mystical experience lives. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, and become part of the Persephone sister fam. So number one, and one of the most essential books on your mystical book list, should be The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. You think you're slick. It's a collection of essays or parables, I guess you could call them, on the experiences of life. They are deep and poetical and beautiful and really inspirational. They have this magical way of dropping you into your reality with a real sense of profound mysticism. It is all about love and meaning and being a person of authenticity in the world, and the quotes are outrageously gorgeous. One of my favorites is, "Let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of heaven dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls." I had that read at my wedding, not gonna lie. It is such a gorgeous, gorgeous, very short, very readable piece of poetical philosophy, and I can't recommend it enough. Go read it. Next, I have the Meditations of Hildegard von Bingen. Now, Hildegard is one of my personal idols. She was a 12th century nun living in Germany, and she is one of the greatest women mystics of all time. She wrote countless pieces of poetry and music and was a fantastic painter, and she experienced these really profound visions all her life of God imparting on her his divine love. What I love about this little collection of pieces of her poetry is that it really drops you down into the essence of God as nature and God as the divine entity that will never stop loving humanity. She's incredibly Jungian in a weird way, and incredibly witchy, and also obviously very Christian, and it is just a beautiful glimpse into what the mystical experience was like in Europe at the 12th century in the Middle Ages. On days when I'm writing or I'm doing something really deep, I'll often pick up this book and just read a couple of these excerpts, and it is just so grounding and so profound. And if you don't know about Hildegard in general, I really recommend, as witches, she's an important person to know. So I recommend getting to know her through some of her own words. All right, moving right along. Next, we have The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This is on probably everybody's book list at some point in their life. This book takes place in a fictional country in Europe and follows, I think he's a shepherd named Santiago. And it's basically Santiago finding out what his destiny is. And he meets an alchemist. And it is such a transformative piece of fiction. It really follows this young boy trying to find himself in the world, trying to drink in and really imbibe the wisdoms that the alchemist imparts and that the world itself imparts on him. And even though it is a piece of fiction, it's a novel, it really kind of gets you right into the mystical heart of what it means to live your own journey and what it means to follow the call of the divine, which speaks through yourself and through the world. And this is just a must read for anybody who finds himself to be questioning their path and who needs that little dose of mystical wonder to keep them going. And it's such a classic. Go read it. Okay, next we're getting into the heavy duty stuff. So this is Blake's complete writings. So you don't need to read this whole thing. I certainly haven't. Anything by Blake really is just very beautiful and weird and fantastical and extraordinary to dive into the mystical experience. William Blake was a poet, a writer, a philosopher, a painter. You see this all the time in these mystical people. They just do everything. It is very impressive. So Blake was a romantic poet, and the stuff that you find in Blake's writing goes all the way back in time to the ancient and also makes so much sense for our world today. If you read any book that is about mysticism, they are going to mention Blake. Blake's artistry was so connected to the soul in process, to the experience and relationship with the human and the divine, and also how we can become the divine ourselves. He also experienced many prophecies and visions, and he was really deeply connected to the spiritual. So if you are a lover of the Romantic era, if you like Emily Dickinson and, Jane Austen, and that's kind of your vibe, you're gonna love, love, love Blake. I just recommend getting a book of his poetry. You don't need to do this crazy deep dive. I'm just, insane. So that's me. Just pick up a little bit of Blake, look at his artwork, just Google it. It's deeply mystical, deeply connected, and love it. I almost forgot to mention Rumi, literally the greatest mystic of all time. I don't know what's wrong with me. That's a despicable oversight. Rumi was a Sufi mystic writing in the late Middle Ages in what's now Afghanistan, and his poetry is beyond gorgeous. There's literally no words to express how beautiful Rumi's poetry is, at least not any words that I have. Rumi's poems are devoted to the divine, devoted to the self, devoted to love primarily. And often in his poetry, he'll reference someone named Shams, who a lot of scholars believe was the love of Rumi's life. However you approach Rumi's poetry, when you are immersed in it, you are fully experiencing what it is like to be in the same room as the great divine love, the great source of all being. It is a glimpse of what that mystical experience is like, of what that ecstatic revelation really feels like in the body. I often will start my day reading a poem by Rumi because it immediately brings me to the source of myself. I cannot recommend reading Rumi enough. Go read Rumi, go love Rumi. You will fall absolutely head over heels. Okay, so for the final two books, I want to get a little intellectual. I think that it's actually better to experience mysticism through people's creative output, but sometimes we need the facts. Sometimes we need to stimulate the brain a little bit, and so these books are for that. So the first one is Alchemy and Mysticism, and I think this is a newer version than the one most people have. She's thick. She's got a lot to say. This book is absolutely extraordinarily gorgeous. I've mentioned it on this channel before. I think it's something everybody should have in their library. And it is basically a collection of images and a collection of all the material that we have from the alchemical and mystical worlds. And if you really want to understand these grander mystical principles, you want to understand the microcosm and the macrocosm, you want to understand the idea of the sacred ladder, this is what you need. You need this book because it's not going to only just tell you intellectually, but it's going to give you the imagery that the actual mystics and alchemists created themselves to help process what these great mystical truths were. It's a great resource to have in general. It's not necessarily something you have to sit down and read in one sitting. I have never read it cover to cover, actually. I always just kind of come at it from what I'm curious about in the moment, and that's the best way to use it. So really, go get this book. It's so important. Finally, we have The Secret Teaching of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. This is a floppy book, my God. So I'm gonna be honest, I've never finished this book. I've barely even gotten 20 pages in. I've tried many times. It's a little dense. However, if you have the gusto to go for it, go for it. This book is very cheap, actually. You can get it an ebook version for almost nothing. And it is just the collection of everything you would ever want to know. And can you just look at this print? This is why I never finished it, because I like to read, but goddamn, It's really the like encyclopedia of like Hermetic philosophy, of Kabbalah, of Rosicrucian and mystical symbology. It's just so much stuff. Just looking at the table of contents is crazy. You have the wonders of antiquity, the Pythagorean theory of music and color, Isis, the virgin of the world. It's just so much stuff, and such a fantastic way to seriously deep dive into the mystical and hermetic world. And this is a thing. This is a thing that if you're brave and you got a big brain, you go for it, and then you tell me how it went. Because apparently I'm not ready. And as I said a few times already, when we're really diving into mysticism, we have to see it as much as an experience as an intellectual pursuit. So I really recommend that if you want to dive into mysticism and you pick up maybe this big old guy or another book that you find along your way, accompany it with someone's poetry, with someone's writing, with someone's imagery. Look at the paintings of William Blake, read the poetry of Rumi, listen to the music of Hildegard von Bingen. Really make your experience of mysticism a complete experience. Really engage the body and the senses and the heart as much as the mind, and it's going to be so much more fulfilling. So that's it. We did it. We covered 7 books that'll help you build your own personal mystical experience. And I hope you read one or all and that they are just everything you hope they'll be. If you haven't yet subscribed, do that. If you haven't yet followed me on Instagram, do that. And of course, go check out my Patreon. If you like my channel, consider supporting me as a creator, and you're gonna get so many goodies back, like weekly deep dives into occult topics and tarot meditations and tarot calendars and readings and moon meetings, and there's just more things than I can remember right now, honestly, so go check it out. It's very much worth it. Thank you, my dears, for sticking around, and have a beautiful, meaningful, mystical day. You're not being very good today, even though you're very beautiful.